Well, thank you all for being here. I bring greetings from President Donald Trump, and I'm grateful in a challenging time in the life of our nation that you would take time to share your insights and your counsel with us, with our administration. I'm here with Scott Turner, who's been leading the advent of opportunity zones all across the United States. But Bishop Jackson, we are truly grateful for the hospitality. And before we bring any remarks, I wondered if you just might favor us by opening us with a word of prayer. My prayer is that we, as a nation, have ears to hear, to listen to one another, and open hearts. And I'd be grateful if you started us with a devotion.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Heavenly Father, we ask that you would lead us and guide us. You said if just two of us agree, that we would be able to bind darkness, release light, and see the blessing of God in an arena. Lord, let us have an agreement. Let us reason together and give wisdom to this administration, especially this Vice President and President. And Scott Turner, we thank you so much for what you're doing, and let this time be fruitful. Amen.
Well, thank you, Bishop Jackson. Thank you for a warm welcome to Hope Christian Church. We gather at a challenging time in the life of our nation, and as President Trump said in the Rose Garden this morning, though, in this time we are determined as Americans to move forward and move forward together with a renewed commitment to equality and equality of opportunity for every American. It is a time, though, when as a nation we mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. And the American people's hearts were broken to see the video that came from the streets of Minneapolis. The death of George Floyd was a tragedy. And we've said from the very outset, justice will be served. And I want to assure all of you and those looking on that we've deployed the full resources of the Justice Department to support the prosecution of those responsible to the fullest extent of the law. Let me also say that it's clear that those images shock the conscience of the nation. We have no tolerance for violence against any individual in this country. No tolerance for police brutality, and no tolerance for rioting in the streets or looting, the destruction of property, or the claiming of innocent lives, including the lives of law enforcement. It's one of the reasons the President took the strong action earlier this week, working with governors, to deploy resources and personnel to our streets. And I'm pleased to report that in cities across the country, we've quelled the violence and made space for peaceful protesters to continue to let their voice be heard. We will always stand for the right of every American to engage in peaceful protest, to seek redress of the government. And because of the efforts of law enforcement and other personnel, we've moved past the violence that we saw in our streets, and we'll continue to do that. But I'm here today to talk about how we move forward. And I'm going to keep my remarks very brief because I'm really here to listen. I have the greatest regard for Bishop Jackson. He knows from the outset of this administration we've worked to expand opportunities for every American, including African Americans. And before the pandemic struck, we we were deeply inspired that we had achieved the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded for African Americans. We'd expanded opportunity zones across the country that had generated over $100 billion of investment in inner cities that had too often been left behind in jobs and opportunities. We passed criminal justice reform, which had the effect of setting right inequities that were in our justice system for decades. And in the midst of all of that, we fought hard to expand educational opportunities and allowing parents to choose where their children go to school. This is all in an effort to address what have been historic inequities in our African American communities and in many of the communities and families in our inner cities. And as we make our way through this time as a nation, our focus now is on healing, on how we heal America. And we received encouraging news today. You may read about in the paper in the morning that our economy is showing strong signs of healing, but we want to follow that by listening and learning and putting into practice the things that will heal our land for every American, extend equality of opportunity to every American. And I thought it was altogether fitting to come here to a place of worship to do that. It is undeniable that in the long struggle for equality in this country, people of faith have played the decisive role. And the entire quest to end slavery emanated from the churches of this country to challenge the conscience of the nation. The civil rights movement that happened when I was a little boy in Columbus, Indiana, I am told by those that were involved, was driven out of the pews of this nation. I had the great privilege 10 years ago, Bishop Jackson, to take my wife and children to Alabama. We walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, arm in arm with my friend John Lewis. But the day before, we spent time in Dr. King's church. And there we met with many of the people that marched with Dr. King, and they said that before they marched, they prayed and they sang and they had worship. And I couldn't help but feel that as our nation reels from the tragic death of George Floyd, that a place to start the conversation is in a place of worship. It's the wellspring of our nation's strength. It's been the wellspring of our national unity and our steady march toward a more perfect union. And so I want to thank you, especially the religious leaders who are here. Thank you for your ministries. Thank you for your willingness to join us, to sit down. I'm anxious to hear your counsel and your thoughts of how we can heal our land, how we can bring the American people together. It will not be enough just for us to heal our economy. We've got to heal that which divides by breaking down the barriers to opportunity to African Americans and any American that's been left behind. And so I'm anxious to gain your insights. I promise you I'll carry them back to President Donald Trump and our entire administration. And today is just one of many conversations that we will have here and across the country in the days ahead. But I'm absolutely confident that that with your steady counsel, with your steady leadership, and with God's grace, we will come through this challenging time. We'll come together, and I know we'll move our nation forward, just as we've always done. So thank you very much. And Bishop Jackson, I'd welcome your thoughts.
Thank you, Vice President. It is an honor to have you here. As we are gathering, it's important for us to remember that we have government leaders as well as business leaders this is a bipartisan attempt to bring folks together in the wake of George, his death, George Floyd. It's almost like the George Floyd family has taken the place of the civil rights leader years ago, a young man named Emmett Till. Emmett Till, when he was murdered in Mississippi and his body was put on display in the greater Chicago, Illinois area, the civil rights movement began. His death was almost prophetic and symbolic of a time and a season that change had to come. And at that moment, whites and blacks came together to address the civil rights issues, and we found momentum. I think we're going to find momentum to see change in this season of time. But my father, Harry Jackson Sr., was a vice president threatened at gunpoint by a state trooper in Florida in the 50s. The guy discharged his weapon over my dad's ear, temporarily deafening him. My dad decided to leave the South at that point after he graduated from Florida A&M University. And my family was involved in politics from a layman's position, bumper stickers, signs in the front yard. They were advocates from then on because they thought that voting was a sacred right. And so we are aware that there have been long-term race issues, two issues, and I'm almost finished with my little remarks as we start. I think that minorities need to hear that they're valued, that the lives of people really matter. My dad was misused and abused in the 50s, and it's not just George Floyd's death alone, but it's representative of an almost 400-year history of challenges that we've had. So this administration did not create this problem or this backdrop, but it has the opportunity to heal it. And so our opportunity is make our family feel together and strong across minority bounds, and then keep safety. I want to close with this analogy. The word picture is kind of like the story I use in a book we're writing, and it's this. Imagine a family going from Cincinnati, Ohio, where I was raised, back to our homeland in Norfolk, Virginia. We got kids in the back, mom and dad in the car. We're riding together. Over the years, we learn our family history, we come together, and we grow up and become equal participants in the drive, the excursions, etc., the kids and the parents. Right now, America is becoming a majority-minority country. It will take about 20 years before the majority of Americans are minorities, but it will happen soon. This year, 18 years old and under, we have a majority-minority. So every member in the family has got to feel loved and accepted. Now, that's not expressly the job of government. That's the job of government, business, and the church. We all got to do it together. And so as a family member, I close with this thought. Am I a full-fledged member of this family? Is what Hispanics, blacks, Asian Americans are asking of themselves somewhere. And then, am I going to be safe? Am I going to be cared for? And we've got to do it. So my book is going to be called A Manifesto, but it's really an American Christian worldview attempt to say, let's get our values together so we can rekindle King's dream, and I believe God's dream, that we'd be a part of a nation that gives glory to God. So thanks for coming. Those are my brief remarks. And we want to turn it over to our great friend, Scott Turner, who leads Opportunity Zones initiatives.
Hello? Am I on?
Yeah, you're probably on, but
All right. How about that?
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, sir, for your leadership in our country, but also, one, your heart for the Lord and your heart for the American people. And so I personally thank you for that. And Bishop Jackson, my great friend and brother, thank you for having us here today. And to all of our guests and pastors and friends that are here, I'm very humbled to sit on the stage with you and consider it an honor. You know, I was sitting as I was listening to the Vice President and to Bishop speak about our country, where we have been, where we are, and where we're going. And I was sitting here and I was saying to myself, in the midst of everything that's happening in our country, our mission remains the same, and our resolve remains resolute. And as the Bible says, our face is set like flint, because we have the same spirit and we have the same mission, and the 320 plus million people in this country matter. They not only matter, everyone is important, and our mission is to serve the people of America prior to the COVID pandemic. And as it goes for opportunity zones, of which I have the honor of stewarding the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. Prior to the pandemic, we had traveled to over 60 cities across America. Many of you have been involved in the Opportunity Zone initiative. And we have seen much fruit come to pass with private capital being investment, partnered with federal resources, and building stakeholder groups and collaborations with faith leaders such as yourself, and business leaders, education, community leaders, elected officials, transcending socioeconomic, transcending politics, parties, because poverty really doesn't have a party. Poverty doesn't have a color. You know,
Right.
Poverty affects all of us either directly or indirectly, and our heart and our mission is the eradication of poverty, the building up of economic development and entrepreneurship and education and safe neighborhoods and workforce development inside of the distressed communities of America and the vulnerable communities. As the president talks about the forgotten people and forgotten communities, well, they're not forgotten anymore. In opportunity zones, we were moving along, and we're still moving. But the president has refocused the council now to include all of the distressed communities, including opportunity zones, and to focus on access to health care, to focus on the expansion of broadband for telehealth and for distance learning for kids across our nation. Now they'll have access to the best teachers, you know, because we have virtual learning online. And with the CARES Act, we saw the vice president and the president and administration make available resources for Health and Human Services, $2 billion to go to our community health centers, you know, to help those citizens, about 28 million people inside of distressed communities at our centers. Also for COVID testing for those that cannot afford it. With Secretary Carson and HUD, $4 billion grant to help with homelessness and foreclosures and evictions, as Bishop and I were talking about, and so on and so forth, and PPE, you know, and money being set aside for minority lending institutions for those businesses to thrive and to build and to recover. Because as the vice president said before, we are about action. We're about outcomes. We are about results, both short-term and long-term. And the heart here is long-term sustainability. And through the recovery of this pandemic, the sustainability is even now more important. Your voices have always been important. Your influence has always been important, and even now today is greater, because many of you, because of what God has called you to, see every stakeholder group of our country come in and out of your sanctuaries, in and out of your churches, your ministries, your foundations, and your voice is so important. So we're here today to listen to you, to see how you've been impacted, to hear your advice and wisdom for us, as the vice president said, so that we can help serve you and partner with you together to be a blessing to our country. And I stand ready, along with the vice president and the president and the entire administration and team, to serve you in a way to that those that come behind us will be blessed. Generations to follow us will be blessed because of what we do today, because everybody in this country is so valuable and important. I thank God personally for his grace, because even through all of this, the anger, the pain, that we feel, man, God's grace is sufficient for us. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm hushed, and we're going to get on because we want to hear from all of you, and so we'll get to that portion of our time together to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Scott. And I'd love to just hear from all of you about your experience. Maybe we could start on this side. And you've got a microphone handy. And I didn't acknowledge some people, members of your church, people in the community who are with us. Thank you. Honored that you would be here. Aaron, I think members of the media are certainly welcome to stay. I'd like them to hear this counsel every bit as much as we are. So please, you might just introduce yourself for everybody.
Yes, my name is Damian Cook, and I'm a servant here at Hope Christian Church. And I'm also a professional in the addiction and behavioral health field. And I'm here today, and I'm actually very appreciative of the opportunity to really speak my piece. I was a little concerned because obviously just leery about this being some type of opportunity to kind of, garner votes, a photo op, because at the end of the day, there's a discussion that has to be had. I believe really that discussion is the voice of the young, the voice of the youth. I think they're not being heard. And if they're being heard, it hasn't been acknowledged. When I say that is, and I was just listening to you speak, and we do appreciate any advancements that you've made. However, it loses value in the eyes of the youth if their needs aren't being addressed, if their feelings aren't being addressed. The movement today is, say, Black lives. We understand human life is valuable. However, everybody's is enraged because it seems to be blacks who have been going viral after being murdered, right? We see these images and it's of blacks. We want that to be not just understood, but actually stand with us. What's happening is there's a division, as you see. You have the Black Lives Matter movement, and then you have what they now call allies. That's everyone else. On the other end, you have the administration, and then you have MAGA. It shouldn't be that way, as we know. But the thing is, we're not listening to each other, and that's the issue. You mentioned something about the rioting. 100% the looting, unacceptable. It's illegal. But what's happening is the abuse that they have been taking is illegal, right? And so they're saying my rights and the law is not protecting me, so why should I abide by yours? In a sense, the nation is pretty much reaping what they sow. And it's breaking my heart to see this. At the end of the day, I would like to see direction in this movement. I love the opportunity to speak with leadership and the church having a voice. We all know Dr. King and his movement, and we talk about it constantly, and you touched on it, but it was a corporate anointing that moved that movement. What's going to have to happen is the church is going to have to be responsible for shepherding the people. And the relationship has to be open with leadership. These kids are angry, and they're not sure exactly what to do with that anger, and actually even what the end game may be, other than they want to be heard and they want justice, and they want it today. However, the leaders here need to unite. And I'm not just saying Bishop Jackson, who is always on the front line, right? The pastors that are here. I'm talking about all of the pastors that have big platforms need to stand up and need to be visible, because we'll follow. It's great to have, and I'm gonna be quiet in a second. It's great to have these big pastors and their inspiring words on their posts, right? Facebook and Instagram. But the people that really need to hear it, to be honest with you, they're not actually following their page. So at the end of the day, we need the church present, not just Al Sharpton. We need the church present. And we need to know that the church and state are in line. Because at the end of the day, our allegiance as the church is to God and to his people. And so the division comes with the church is, if you are not serving the people, you have a problem with the church. Because that's our job, right? So we need, as the youth, we need that movement of God. We need to know that we have power in the spiritual realm. We need to know that. So we have to be unified in doing that because people are lost. The grounds are here for that. This is a revival. This is time for a revival. They're hungry for it. But we have to stand up and unite. We have to. So thank you.
Thank you, Damon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Damon.
And
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you for that, sir. We, as we facilitate, and Damon, thank you for your remarks. As we facilitate the meeting and as we move along, we want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to speak. And so if we can be mindful, of that time and take a couple minutes to give your remarks and then to move to the next guest, that would be very, very helpful so that everyone can get an opportunity, because we want to hear from all that are involved. So thank you. Thank you, David. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Earl Etienne, and I'm first and foremost a son of God. I am a father. In my professional life, I'm the Director of Graduate Programs and Industry Partnerships and a tenured professor at Howard University here in our nation's capital. And it's definitely a privilege to have the opportunity to extend comments in this situation. We could spend the entirety talking about a lot of stuff and talking about who did what wrong, right? But these are times that require leadership. And for a leader, first and foremost, to really get following, he must first have the heart. If leaders don't get the heart of the people, we would be unable to truly move things forward. So I'll begin there first and foremost. Secondly, anyone can riot, anyone can be upset, but we have to approach this from a position of love. We have to be able to love the individuals who have been mistreated or maltreated for an extended period of time. And if we are unable to put ourselves in their shoes, then we would not be able to lead them from a position of less. We hear the terms all the time, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Many of these guys don't have boots. So they can't pull themselves up by the bootstraps. We need to be real, okay? The soul of what's taking place didn't just happen last night. It's been a persistent process over years and generations. And we have an opportunity today to bring about bold solutions. I'm at an HBCU. Make HBCUs funded at twice time its operating budgets, okay? We understand that in HBCUs, we are able to take people from poverty to wealth very quickly, and we bat ahead of our class. Make those school centers of excellence. Start here in the nation's capital with Howard University. Fund it. Set clear goals for entrepreneurship to come out from these ideas, right? And ensure that we're getting true resources in place. We need to have open, clear, honest conversations. Sometimes take the lights off and let's just go at it, right? But we have to understand each other, but understand each other from a position of love. Awesome. And I will stop there, but thank you for the opportunity to really contribute, and I am open, willing, and able to contribute in more ways than one, and this should not be just a conversation for today. It should be an ongoing process.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Etienne. Great words. Howard University is one of our great HBCUs. And The president just reflected this morning about we were proud to make funding for our HBCUs permanent. But when you talk about the youth, like Damien did, with such great passion and sincerity, and you speak about the role of education, we really, this is I've worked for more than a generation on the principle that we ought to be allowing inner city families to be able to choose where their children go to school, whether it's public or private or parochial. And we've actually doubled the DC school choice program nearby in Washington, DC. And as we talk about the youth, we talk about education, I want you to know we want fresh ideas about how we can improve the education for our minority kids, to give them the opportunity to be able to rise up and prosper in this economy. Thank
Can I
you.
add
Great
one
words.
thing real
Please,
fast?
go ahead.
10 seconds.
Then maybe we'll bounce over here. We'll
Okay.
just bounce back and forth.
He's got some ideas about how to strategically invest in HBCUs that will be helpful. We don't have time to go into the details now, but it may be that we need to make a few of them really world-class and do that one by one instead of taking limited resources and maybe spread them too far apart. So I'm sure he'll write up more about it. Thank you.
Great. I'd really welcome that.
Thank you so
They're
much.
great institutions, and we love Howard University. What a great school. They're fortunate to have you. You want to bounce over here?
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to be here, sir, and thank you for having us. First, Mr. Vice President, my name is Derek McCoy, and I've been working with, came from this place right here, Hope Christian Church, and but at the same time, we have been able to work with pastors around the country and been able to have a voice in some real key issues, I believe, that are affecting the country. So all of that being said, being asked this simple question about, what can you take away? There's a couple of points that I just said, let me write down so that I'm very clear as best I can be. I've been reading the letter from the Birmingham jail recently. One of the excerpts, and I think which is indicative of where we are today, is just a small piece right at the small little sentence at the beginning of that letter that basically talks about there comes a time when the cup of endurance begins to run low. And where people are, I think, is just at the place around the country that their endurance is running low because we go after it again, And who's to say while we're sitting here, another incident doesn't happen. And all of a sudden it happens again. And so that's what begins to mitigate that endurance for a lot of people in terms of, I want to see change. I absolutely applaud the efforts of the Opportunity Zones. I applaud the efforts of the administration and where you have been to date, and even the criminal justice reform, which so many people don't even understand or know about. I try to be an advocate to help them understand these are the advancements that have been made. At the same time, being a dad and being a father of two boys, similar to the age of Ahmaud Arbery, who was running in the street, and you start to understand, I have to have conversations, and we've had to have conversations over these last several years, and in these last season especially, about the truth of you can't go everywhere. Don't go running around by yourself. Make sure you check in and make sure that you come home, son. Because as a dad, I'm concerned to make sure they come home. And at times, knowing my own history of being in the South where my parents were, where my dad was raised, and I would sit down there and having to run from pickup trucks because they would just jump out. And my cousin would just say, run. And as fast as we could run is as fast as we could be safe. And so I understand that, but I've chosen, by the grace of God, to try not to grow up with the lens of bitterness and unforgiveness. These glasses are representative of lenses that we look through to change our vision. And I think for the church, we have to be agents that help people change their vision and perspective about the grace, the love of God, and everything about it. But really change and exchange this, and I'll try and be short, but exchange our ethnicity for our Christianity. And I don't say that lightly. And I know some people will be in an uproar about that. But if you understand, it's really important for kids to feel safe, our sons to come home, our families to be safe. I think when you're looking at the standards that are around broadly around our country, maybe it's time for a criminal justice reform 2.0. And I know it's a tough thing. And I know it's a lot of effort to go into the first one. But when you start looking at how can we standardize policies around the training efforts with these law enforcement efforts and these individuals so that there's not mistakes that happen so abruptly. The challenge with the George Floyd is that, as one governmental leader just said, there are multiple cases like this happening right now. Mm-hmm. And one governor said, hey, look, I got a half a dozen of these cases easy that I got to think about. And it's not just the George Floyd, and it's not just the Michael Brown. It's not just, the other people who have gone this tragic route. It's the repetition of that. So maybe it's a way that there can be some federalized standards in our training system, federalized standards in the way we bring people in to process them through the recruitment process and then the background checks, and then understanding how do we know where they are after that. So I know it's a lot to say. There's a lot of conversations. I've talked to several pastors before even coming here. But it's just one of those things. They're concerned, and they want to make sure, and this is just an honest thing, sir, there has to be a way that even, if I was with the president himself, I would say the same thing, that you got to take a step back. My mother told me this a long time ago. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And sometimes we got to take a step back and figure out how we say things and the tone of where it comes from. Right. And I think right now we're in a place where America is listening, and we have to have the right tone. And if we get it wrong one time, so what? Change it. Right. Fix it. Try and figure it out so that we can have the tuning of the ear to the people that need to hear some of these things that are desperately going on in our communities. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brett. Wonderful insights. And those two boys are awful blessed to have you as a dad, I can tell. Really, really appreciate your thoughtful comments, Derek. We really do. Why don't we swing around this way, and we'll just please introduce yourself, and we welcome your thoughts.
Yes, my name is Bishop Clinton Sherrod. My thought about this is there needs to be more training for law enforcement. I was a police officer for 13 years. And one of the things that I know that was lack was there was training on paper, but not actual training. A lot of people come in, being a police officer that have been in the military, and they have all types of issues, and they are quick to hire them. They come in with a smile on their face, top shape, but mentally they are disturbed. And I feel personally that they don't hold them accountable enough. There's a lot that goes on behind the scene that is in writing. I would go as far as saying that a lot of policies are in place, but they're not carried out. A lot of police officers, they're under stress right now. I'm not defending anybody. For me, it's not color, because we all are God's children, and God created us all. So, but I just believe that there needs to be more training and accountability with the training. Don't just give me the training December 2019, then 2020, you don't have the funds for the training. 21 come, there's no funds for the training. I've spent 2 years, my mind is all over the place. I just came back from war, and now I go off, and now you want to hold me accountable for what has taken place. I believe that there should be more accountability held staff above the law enforcement, and it should be hands-on, not just documents. Because, like I said, I believe a lot of things are in place for us writing, but the accountability of what has been put in place, there's not time. One of the things that I would say is shorter manpower, which brings more work hours on the police officer and anybody else, firefighters, anybody else, which brings stress, and your home fall apart, and you're going to work every day with a smile on your face, and everybody's saying you're okay. But in your thought process, in your mind, you're still having flashbacks and going through the things that you went through years ago. So I feel that if we begin to deal with the issue before there is an issue, that it will be better. Before someone is killed, there was a past or a history of that person before it got to that point. But now we want to deal with it because a life has been taken when it should have been dealt with before then. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Sharon. Thank you so much. My uncle was actually a police officer in Chicago, Illinois, for 25 years. And I appreciate your thoughts. And I know we all appreciate the job that men and women in law enforcement do every day and the unique challenges that they face. And but we'll take back your thoughts, because there's no tolerance for what we saw on that street, those 4 officers, and there never should be. And but I appreciate your being here, Bishop, more than I can say. We have with us Dr. Michael Kim and Mrs. Joan Kim, who I'd welcome your thoughts. I know it's been a very difficult, challenging time for you. And maybe you tell us your story. It was, I will tell you, in one of the roles the President's given me to lead the White House Coronavirus Task Force, we've been surging resources, particularly to our minority communities, testing resources, supplies, as people deal with the coronavirus. And one of the heartbreaking aspects of the rioting and the looting that we just passed through in cities around the country is that many pharmacies that were providing coronavirus testing and pharmacies and clinics that principally serve minority communities were put upon. And so I'm sorry for what you've been through, but tell us your story and any other thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for listening to us. My wife and I were both children of immigrant parents who came here to live the American dream, and we've been provided with that American dream. We have both gone through the public school systems. I went to University of Maryland, graduated from Howard University College of Pharmacy, and we both have been made, we've been able to raise our 6 children the best that we can, build businesses, and so at this point we currently have 4 independent pharmacies in Washington, D.C. And we're there to help, we're there to serve the community and do whatever we can. So recently we did start offering COVID-19 testing at our community pharmacy sites, and this is in partnership with HHS. And there's only 3 pharmacies inside the District of Columbia that are testing, other than the testing sites that are run by the city. And so we're very proud of it. And yes,
Were you testing at all your locations?
we're testing at 3 out of the 4 locations.
No. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. You're welcome. And it's heartbreaking what happened. Saturday night, we get a call from the alarm company. somewhere around midnight. Alarm is going off. We head down to DC, and we see that 2 of our pharmacies were broken into. So we have some help, and we boarded up the windows the best we could at that time. Sunday night comes around, another alarm goes off. We head down probably 2:30 in the morning, and that was the craziest night because while we were en route, we got another call that another location was broken into. And then we got another call that, I mean, it was just back to back to back to calls from the alarm company just letting us know that another location was broken into. And we're pulling up our video surveillance cameras, and we're just watching this stuff happen. And just floods and floods and mobs of people are just flooding into the pharmacies, taking whatever they want. You know, obviously they're taking as many drugs as they can, and they're not even taking, you know, what we call the good stuff. They're just grabbing anything off the shelves. So they got plenty of, you know, Tylenol and aspirins and high blood pressure medications, and God bless them. Hopefully they'll get well from those. But you know, but it was so that was Saturday, Sunday, Monday night happens again. 2 of our locations get vandalized. One location gets a U-Haul van, driven through the wall. Another location, just a mob of about 20 guys just rush in after breaking the windows. And then we were praying and hoping for Tuesday night to be quiet. Unfortunately, it didn't end up that way. About 4:30 in the morning, another group tried to break in, but by this time we had a lot of boards up, and so they were not able to get in. So praise God for that. By the end of this thing, I guess Tuesday night, finally, I believe we got a night, a restful night's sleep, somewhat. But it's just been terrible. And, you know, just sitting back, looking at this whole situation, you know, there's a lot of people that I could say that are very evil and bad. And, you know, these are just, obviously they're criminals, but I don't see them as evil. What I see in the world right now is that there's evil and then there's good, right? People by nature are not born evil, but they're influenced by evil. So, you know, during this whole process, my wife and I are praying, and this verse from Romans 12:21 just keeps coming to me. You know, do not allow evil to conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. So I think we need to do more good. We need to shine the light on what the good is that is happening. And unfortunately, the media has a tendency to shine the light on the evil that's happening. It's more dramatic and it's more newsworthy. But, you know, in my industry, in the pharmacy industry, we have what we call the PBMs. That is our evil. That is our coronavirus. And I applaud President Trump for I think he's the first president to finally shine the light on the PBMs and what they're doing to the healthcare system, especially community pharmacies. You know, he provided community pharmacies with a light of hope that maybe finally something will bring this this monopoly down to allow pharmacies to survive. But, you know, unfortunately, the other evils in this world are taking the light away from that. So I feel that, you know, we just need to continue to shine the light on the evils that are happening, you know, throughout the U.S., throughout the world, and just continue to do good and continue to highlight the good that everyone is doing.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kim. And Joan, welcome your thoughts. And but it truly is astonishing. But you said since Tuesday night,
so
it's been quiet
4
relative
nights,
to your pharmacies.
of no sleep. So by Tuesday night, we're delirious. We can't think straight. But we've seen a lot of support from the community, our customers. I mean, we have patients who are on welfare, Medicaid patients who are disabled. And I had a patient come up to me and said, Joan, you have my debit card on file. I want you to pay for this door. And I said, you know, Miss Howard, I don't need your money, but I really will take your heart, because they really feel like we're a part of their family. We've been there since 1867. The store's seen so many things go through. I think at one point Rosa Parks was one of our customers claim to fame to her. But we have a lot of people that have raised families in that neighborhood that have come in and out of the pharmacy, and it breaks their heart. And throughout the years, pharmacists we just put our heads down and eat the loss. We put our heads down and work hard. People break in, we go in and we clean up and we serve our customers with a smiling face. And it's so disheartening, but this opportunity to speak up and say we are hurting and we really want to be there to serve our communities. There's easier ways to make money than be a community pharmacist. But we are there, we truly love what we do, and we want to be able to survive this, and we will. Our community has come together. They're going to try to paint murals on our boarded up pharmacy windows so it doesn't look too depressing. Artists are going to come together and draw pictures on them and make it not look so scary to the neighbors. So thank you so much for your support.
Joan, thank you. It is, and as I said earlier, we'll always defend the right of every American to engage in peaceful protests, but part of this story has been seeing businesses that obviously love the community that you serve being so profoundly impacted by the looting and the rioting. But Dr. Kim, I love your statement, overcome evil with good. I think Dr. King reminded us more than once that you can't drive out darkness with darkness, you drive out darkness with light. And thank you for shining that today. It's truly remarkable for everything you've been through. And we'll be working on these issues in the days ahead. Okay? But thanks for your love for the community and your willingness to be here.